Hello and welcome to the newest episode of the Ryan Log Fantasy Show. This being episode 12 on December 10th, 2020. As always, I'm Ryan.
And I'm Logan.
And today is a glorious day because first of all, there's football on. It's Thursday night, but it is fantasy football playoff time. This is when it gets serious, it gets real. For most leagues, you're about to hit round one of your playoffs. And Logan, the three-time defending champ, has to watch the playoffs from home this year. No chance to four-peat. And I'm trying to reclaim glory and take home my first championship. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantasy playoffs. It's what we've been waiting for all season. So it is exciting. It's going to be fun to watch, see what happens, and looking forward to it.
I don't know about you, but when I hit every week before fantasy playoffs, I'm like, okay, if I win or lose, it's not that bad. I'm not too worried about it. I obviously want to win. But then once you hit the fantasy playoffs, like the round one, now you're just worried about everything. So like having Devontae Adams, you're like, maybe this is the week he goes for 2 points. Like maybe I get screwed this week.
I feel so bad for you with Devontae Adams this week. It's tough.
I have so much doubt, even though I shouldn't. I feel pretty good, but again, it's the playoffs. I don't want to lose. I want to win so bad. But you know what? It's how it goes. So today in this episode, we're going to do our classic yays and nays for week 14, as well as a quick preview for week 14, who we like in every single matchup of the fantasy week 14. So again, we are going to start off with yays and nays. We're going to start off with the quarterback position. And Logan, who is your yay of the week for the quarterback position?
I mean, this one's a little bit more of a deep streamer, but I like Ryan Tannehill this week.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the Jaguars, which, I mean, again, if you can pick on a bad defense, I think Tannehill's actually a good quarterback, playing in an easy matchup. They're going to move the ball. A.J. Brown he's been awesome lately. Corey Davis is great. He's got the weapons to do it there. And I think this week, if you're looking for someone like a desperation start, obviously it's playoffs, so that's not best case scenario, but especially like if you're in 2-quarterback league or something like that, I think Tannehill's he's a strong start this week.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And like you mentioned, Corey Davis has been unreal these last few weeks, and A.J. Brown is a stud. And to have Derrick Henry just with the run game to kind of keep the offense going, Tannehill has the opportunity to get up there in fantasy points. But even when they win games, he doesn't normally have a huge fantasy week. But against the Jaguars in the last 2 games, he's played the Jaguars, he's got 29 fantasy points each time, or roughly about the average of 29 points. So him against the Jaguars is a really good start. And the Jaguars, for some reason, are like randomly competitive against a lot of teams. So they'll probably not keep it overly close, but they'll keep it to the point where he's going to have to still throw the ball late into the game and not just chew the clock out with the run. So I do like Tannehill this year, and it does kind of sting because I had Tannehill on my team at one point and then just dropped him. But I'm in greener pastures in the quarterback position, so I'm not overly worried. So yeah, I agree with that assessment of Ryan Tannehill. I kind of like it. And for me, this one is a very it might seem gross that this is my EA quarterback of the week, but for me it's Andy Dalton. Just because he's a guy that if you kind of are still streaming quarterbacks, or if your quarterback has a bad matchup, I would look to Andy Dalton. Last week against the Baltimore defense, which is a very stingy defense, he scored 18.6 fantasy points and half-point PPR. And you know what? That's pretty good for a team that has looked pretty bad ever since Prescott got injured. And you know what? They play Cincinnati this week, which is the main reason why I'm bringing this up, because Cincinnati has no real offense, has no reliable defense. And he proved last week that he can throw the football and kind of get them back into games. So you know what? This could be the game where he finally starts throwing to guys like Gallup and Cooper and Schultz and finally gets more touchdowns on the board. So if you're looking for a quarterback and you're kind of in a bad spot, I would look to Andy Dalton this week.
Yeah, I don't think there's a huge ceiling with him, but I think of the streamers, probably the safest option. Like, they've got all those weapons, they like to throw the ball, and he hasn't looked great, but he's looked fine. So I think in that great matchup, I think he's a guy who, he's not going to screw you. He's going to give you a solid, dependable week. And honestly, I think if you're streaming in the playoffs and your team is good enough, I think that's what you'd be looking for in many cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? For some people, for me, it'd be interesting to see if you start him, because I don't think anyone has started a Dallas quarterback since Dak got hurt. So maybe this is the time you bring it back. It might be gross. I understand that, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. All right, so those are the yays, but now we got to go to the nays, the guys we don't like. So the quarterback for me, you know what, I'm not overly fond of this week. You know what? It's tough to say this, but I think it's Josh Allen against Pittsburgh. You know what? He has the capability and the talent to obviously go for a big game against a defense like Pittsburgh, but I think Pittsburgh is going to be really motivated, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to come back after a really tough loss to Washington. I think that defense is going to be flying, ready to go. And Josh Allen, you know what? He's been very good the last couple weeks, but you know what? Against a team like I've said, Pittsburgh, they're very well coached. They have a great defense. The offense had a tough game. Josh Allen just might struggle against Pittsburgh. It's very possible, and I don't think he's going to give you the type of production that you're normally used to from a guy like Josh Allen.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough matchup. He's a really hot and cold player too. Like when he's on, it actually like I've been amazed this year. So I didn't think he was all that good, and he's looked great. But then he has his games where he gets flustered. He doesn't quite have that accuracy, and if the Pittsburgh defense can get to him, you could be right. There's no in between. He's either dropping 25 or 30, or he's dropping like below 15.
Like, get this, from the first 4 weeks of his season, he had 28, 34, 32, 25 fantasy points in his first 4 games. Started out red hot, and then his next games after that was 18, 16, 16, 13, and then goes again for 36, 28, and then 16 and 30.
Yeah.
So like you said, it's either he's dropping a very okay game or he's dropping an unreal game. So it's like you don't know what you're getting from Josh Allen. And like I've said, with Pittsburgh, I think that team is really good defensively. And if they get to Josh Allen, he could have one of those mediocre games where he's getting roughly about 17 to 18 points a game.
Okay, my guy, he's coming off a big game. He's kind of in that streamer category. It's Matt Stafford.
Ooh.
It's a tough matchup with Green Bay. I believe I saw Kenny Galladay still not expected to be back. And I mean, he's coming off a big game against Chicago, so you'd think maybe he's a guy, he's heating up, you could start him. I mean, I think a lot of people really liked him coming into this season, but I would not be excited to be starting Matt Stafford this week. The Chicago matchup is one to avoid in general.
Oh, absolutely.
Green Bay. Yeah. That's my bad.
Green Bay, yeah. I think that the Lions, even though they won last week, did they win? Yeah, they won last week against the Bears. It's just one of those teams that it's just they can have a really good game like that, and then the next week they don't do that well, and I don't think they're going to have Galladay again, so they're not going to have the receiving weapons to really get the job done, and they've been so inconsistent all year, especially Stafford. He's had really good games, and he's had really bad games, so that's the quarterback I just want to definitely stay away from. Don't look at him. Kind of just leave him on the waiver wire on your bench if you have him. All right, so now we're going to move on to the running back position. I feel like we should start off with the running back news of the day of Christian McCaffrey looking doubtful to play. Matt Rule is not expecting him to play Week 14, which that is a huge loss for fantasy owners of Christian McCaffrey, because especially if you've made the playoffs without him to this point and you were hoping to get him back, your team could have a huge boost in the playoffs, but now you have to do it for at least one more week and hopefully try to make round 2. So I think an easy guy to start off with, this isn't my guy right away, but Mike Davis. Mike Davis, you have him. Hopefully if you're a McCaffrey owner, you have Mike Davis on your bench. Plug him in, especially against Denver. Like, they've used Mike Davis a lot this season. He's been pretty good, and I think it's really good to have Mike Davis because it looks like DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel are both not going to play due to COVID. So he's going to be one of the only options left in Carolina offensively, so I think he's definitely a guy that you can start in complete confidence this week.
Yeah, I think he's a guy, again, especially with the potential that both DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel missed this week, that bumps his ceiling up quite a bit. Denver, I don't think, is going to be all that competitive in this game. Like, they're not a very good team. Mm-hmm. So I think Mike Davis is a guy you can pretty comfortably fire up this week.
Yeah, Denver's pretty much just mailing it in. They're just going to call it a year pretty early, so it's good news for fantasy owners, especially in the playoffs, because that defense is not really going to care anymore. So, but this goes to I'm going to go off with my running back yay of the week, and that is DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift with the Lions, you know what? It's going to be a tough matchup against Green Bay, but just in general, but the run defense for Green Bay this season has not been overly great. And DeAndre Swift is coming off 2 very good games in a row, especially against Washington, where he had 16 rushes for 81 yards, 5 receptions for 68 yards and a touchdown. You know what? I expect that same kind of workload to continue against that's against...
Green Bay.
They're playing Green... Oh, sorry. Yeah, they are playing Green Bay. My apologies.
We've had a hard time with this Lions matchup. Both of us now.
Both of us have tough time. Oh, my goodness. But, yeah, you know what? It's just one of those matchups with Carolina. They're not an overly amazing team. So he can have a really good run game, and they've used him a lot more now because I feel like now he's come off the concussion. If he plays, regardless, you know what? He's still technically questionable, but he's looking on the good side of questionable. I feel like they're just going to let him go because they got a couple games left. They have nothing to play for. Let the rookie kind of show what he's going to do. So give me more DeAndre Swift this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think like the concussion, it's not a type of like lingering, ease them back kind of injury. It's either you're healthy or you're not. So it's not like there shouldn't be any worries of like easing him back into the lineup or the game plan or anything. So I think if he's full go, it's a good matchup and it's a good start.
Mm-hmm. Who is your guy for the week?
I like Ronald Jones this week.
Wow.
He's a matchup dependent running back. If you think the Buccaneers are going to be winning in any given week, that's a great week to start them. And with them playing the Vikings, I think it's going to be a pretty decisive win for the Buccaneers, and that means Ronald Jones is going to be running the ball a lot.
Run.
He is very good on the ground. He doesn't really offer anything in the receiving game, but he's a very good running back.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that Vikings defense, it's beatable. It's not a great defense.
Yeah.
So I think, again, assuming that they're ahead, I think he's going to have a great week.
Yeah. All right, so now to the running backs of the week. You know what, for me, it's David Johnson. David Johnson, he played last week against Indianapolis. He had a pretty good game, 10.5 fantasy points, pretty much met his projection of that week. But you know what? He wasn't that effective on the ground, 10 rushes for 44. It's not overly great. It is for pretty much 4.4 yards per carry. But this week, it's basically just matchup dependent. They're playing Chicago. That's a really good defense, especially with Khalil Mack. And I do expect the Bears to somehow find a way to get that offense rolling and get ahead in that game. So Houston's probably going to avoid the run pretty early and start throwing the football, which means probably a lot more Duke Johnson maybe than you would expect. So I'm not a big fan of David Johnson this week.
Yeah, he's not the running back he used to be, and he was probably a matchup play regardless. So in a tough matchup, it's really hard to trust him to give you good production this week.
Absolutely. Who do you got, Logan? Who do you absolutely not like at the running back spot?
I mean, this one hurts because, he's on my team. I've been holding out hope all season, but Miles Sanders.
Ooh, wow.
It's a brutal matchup. That New Orleans defense is really good, and Miles Sanders, like, his last 3 weeks, he got 7.6 points, 5.2 points, and then last week against Green Bay, 3.1 points. Like, they haven't been using the running backs. That could change under Jalen Hurts, like, as the quarterback. There's been some talk of, like, some read option offense that should benefit the running backs, but in a tough matchup against New Orleans with a rookie quarterback, I don't have high expectations for that offense, and especially with a beat-up O-line, I think it's going to be tough to find room between the tackles.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only thing you can really hope for Miles Sanders is that, Jalen Hurts finally has a different offense and be able to get the ball downfield, which then opens it up in the middle for Miles Sanders. But like you said, it's a rookie quarterback against an elite defense in New Orleans. It's going to be a rough day. And look what a guy like Bill Belichick did to Justin Herbert last week. Completely shut him down. Sean Payton is not Bill Belichick, but Sean Payton is a very good head coach and will probably find a way to kind of screw up Jalen Hurts in his official first start as a quarterback.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally get you there. I'm not really a big fan. But we're going to move on to the wide receiver position for my yay of the week. We kind of briefly talked about him, but it's Corey Davis. I really like Corey Davis this week. He's had unreal production so far at the wide receiver position, which I did not expect going into this season. He was a guy that I think most people were kind of giving up on ever since he got drafted. He never really had unbelievable production in fantasy, but then these last couple weeks he's put up 22 points, 9, 13, 8, 29. He's been very consistent. Yeah. And the thing that you like to see is last game he got 12 targets. And to get 12 targets in an offense like Tennessee, that is very valuable. So to have A.J. Brown kind of take away a lot of the heavy corners that are going to try to shut them down, Corey Davis can absolutely gain some points. And they're playing Jacksonville. divisional opponent, not a great team. This is like, look what Jefferson and Thielen did against them last week. They both did really well. I would expect Corey Davis and also A.J. Brown to do really well this week.
Yeah, I agree. Especially in a PPR league, like A.J. Brown is the number one wide receiver for sure, but he's not a volume guy. Like, he's very much a big play, kind of get his 5 or 6 targets a week, whereas Corey Davis seems to be the guy who gets the kind of heavy target volume. And against a easy matchup, I think that could very easily translate into double-digit catches.
Oh, absolutely. You fire him up and you enjoy it.
Yep.
All right, who do you got as your EA wide receiver of the week?
I mean, I don't love it, but T.Y. Hilton.
Oh, wow.
I mean, we've called for it a couple times. We kept saying, like, Michael Pittman looks to be the guy there, but the last couple weeks it's been T.Y. Hilton. I think that offense is going to have a good week against the Las Vegas Raiders, and I think, especially if he can hit on a deep ball or something like that, he's gonna have a really good week.
And you know what? It feels like this is the curtain call for Ty. This is his like fantasy riding off into the sunset. He might be able to give you one last good playoff push before he's kind of going out into the pasture.
Yeah, I mean he was under 10 points all season, and then the last 2 weeks 16.1 and then 21 points. So he's been heating up. He's on a good run. I expect him to be the number one target there this week, which I think is a good guy to have.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to move on to our nays. The guys that we know what are kind of the guys that you don't really feel overly fond of starting this week. And you know what? For me, it might be a little bit tough, but I'm not a big fan. It hurts to say this, but I'm not a huge fan of Calvin Ridley. You know what? It's still very doubtful. It's questionable if we're going to have Julio Jones. And if Julio Jones, even if he plays, it takes a lot away from Calvin Ridley regardless. Ridley had an unbelievable start, but ever since then, he's kind of cooled down. He hasn't had the same amount of production that he did before. And he's been battling an injury almost all year, it feels like. So he's been still be getting you about double-digit points, but going against the Charger defense, like, I don't even think it's the defense. Our offense has been good, but it's basically Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan can't make great decisions. It feels like at this point the dementia of old age is getting to him. And you know what? It's just something I don't feel overly fond of this week, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all there. That offense,
and it hurts to say because it's my Falcons. I don't want to be trashing them on the show, but You know what? They deserve this. You stink. Be better. Don't be bitter. Be better. All right, Logue, who's the guy that you don't like this week?
I mean, it's a guy, he's coming off a half-decent game. He's in a much bigger role than we expected, but it's Brandon Cooks.
Oh.
I mean, I've talked about this defense a lot this year. Chicago, it's a brutal defense to have to play against. I think they're going to key in on Brandon Cooks quite a bit since he's the main weapon for Deshaun Watson at this point. And, I mean, he's a guy, he can always catch a long touchdown, but I think it's going to be tough this week to really have a big impact for your team.
Yeah. All right, now we're going to move on to the tight end position. Some yays and nays for tight ends. For me, my yay of the week, I like two really guys. I'd like to have two guys I really like the tight end position, but I feel like I have to go with Hunter Henry against the Atlanta Falcons because you know what? If I'm going to trash him, I'm trashing him all the way. So the Falcons defense we know all year has been very bad. And the Chargers, I feel like that offense is ready for an explosion game because they got embarrassed last week against the Patriots. Didn't even score a point, got bagelled. And you know what? They're going to come out. I think Herbert's going to go out slinging. He's going to throw the football a lot. So that obviously helps Keenan Allen. That helps Austin Eckler and Mike Williams. But I think that really helps Hunter Henry because the Falcons haven't really been good against the tight end all season. And it's just, again, they're in the dome, so don't have to worry about weather or anything. And like I already said, Chargers, embarrassed. They got Anthony Lynn is pretty much fighting for his job at this point.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to score points regardless all game. So give me Hunter Henry all day.
Yeah, I like it. He's been good this year. He's kind of finally got back to that form that he was looking at in his rookie season, like early on in his career. He's finally kind of recaptured that, like, consistent fantasy tight end status.
Mm-hmm. All right, who is the guy you like this week at tight end?
I mean, this is a guy, it's kind of going up against the matchup, but Robert Tonyan. He's got Detroit, which is not a great tight end matchup, but Aaron Rodgers looks for him in the end zone, which Aaron Rodgers is basically doing whatever he wants this season. He's been unbelievable. So if he wants to throw it to Tonyan in the end zone, he's going to catch a touchdown, which is what he's done the last 3 weeks. So
yeah,
I think if you're going to take a gamble on a tight end, which is really what it is at this point, I think he's a guy that should be in your lineup.
Absolutely. And you know what? There was another. I feel like my other guy I really liked. I just not gonna talk deep. It was Ebron.
Yeah.
Just so listeners, and I know there's a listener that would probably care if I mentioned his name in the like. I do like Ebron this week. Just letting you know. But my guy I don't like. My nay tight end of the week is Dallas Goedert. Like we've already mentioned, the fact that you're gonna have Jalen Hurts start at quarterback against that very stingy New Orleans defense. It's going to be something I want to avoid on all offensive side of the ball for the Eagles. And Goddard's been very reliable almost all season when he's been healthy. But again, I don't like him with the rookie quarterback. You don't know what's going to happen. He could very well go off, but I would pretty much want to avoid it, especially in the playoffs. You want to just have your safe options, the guys that you can rely on and with high upside. So again, I don't have any faith really in any Philadelphia offensive players.
Yeah, it's dicey. I mean, if there's a guy you're going to start, it's probably Goddard just because he's been good and he's a tight end. But I think that's an offense to avoid as much as you can against a really tough matchup, again, with the rookie QB, who he's more of a running QB, which we've seen what that does to the offense with Taysom Hill. Like, it might work for, like, actual NFL standards, but for fantasy, it kind of brings down all of his weapons, and that value translates directly to the quarterback instead.
Mm-hmm. All right. Who is your guy that you don't like, Logan? Who is your nay tight end?
I mean, I'm kind of picking on the Houston Texans this week, but Jordan Akins, again, it's the Chicago matchup, which actually on paper is a pretty good tight end matchup, but considering Akins is one of 2 or 3 guys that's really a threat in that offense, I think, again, they're going to have a hard time moving the ball, in my opinion. So I'd be trying to avoid as many Houston Texans as I can.
Yeah, it's one of those things where since they don't have the flying V anymore, it's tough to really start anybody other than Brandon Cooks almost at this point. So yeah, and Aiken, you can probably find better options at the tight position on the waiver wire that could probably give you a little more upside than Akins. So I totally agree. Stick away from that. No problems there. All right, so that wraps up yays and nays for this week. We're going to move on to a very quick a very quick preview of what we think every matchup's going to be for Week 14 and especially Round 1 of the Fantasy Playoffs. We are not going to do tonight's game because what's the point of us telling you this game? Because it would only be fun for us to listen back on whether we got it right or not.
Yeah, it's not helping anybody.
It's not going to help nobody. So we're going to move on to, Week 14, starting off with the Falcons-Chargers. Who do you like? Who do you don't like?
I mean, I like Austin Eckler a lot this week. He's a guy you're obviously going to start, but the Falcons historically have struggled against pass-catching running backs, and that's his specialty. So
yeah,
I think he's going to, easy top. I would almost put him in the top 5 this week. I think he's going to absolutely smash.
Yeah, you know what? I'd go even one step further. I think almost all Chargers offensive players are going to have a really good week. I'm predicting pretty much the Chargers are going to score roughly 35 to 40 points this week. So give me more Herbert, give me Allen, which is good for me because I got both, but give me Mike Williams, and especially Eckler too. I love that, having all the Chargers players. And the guy for the Falcons to really, really avoid is Hayden Hurst. He's been a pretty reliable tight end for most of the season, but the last 3 weeks he's been very bad.
Yeah.
So if you can find a better option, kind of pivot away from it because I don't have any faith there. All right, Texans-Bears.
I mean, we've discussed the Texans side quite a bit, so I'm going to say start David Montgomery. He's been really good lately. He looks a lot better all of a sudden, and I mean, it's a great matchup, so fire him up with a lot of confidence this week.
Fire him up and fire up our boy Allen Robinson. Because you know what? The man deserves to be freed in the offseason, and he will be free.
Yep.
But while he's tied down, you might as well start him for the Chicago Bears because he's one of the more reliable options, and Trubisky proved again that he's going to target Robinson very heavily.
Yep.
So have faith to start him because Robinson is amazing. All right, Titans, Jaguars.
I think this is a week you could start DJ Chark again. Mike Glennon's looked passable.
DJ Chark, I'm sorry.
DJ Chark's talented, so I think he's a guy, if you're looking for a wide receiver start, he's passable this week.
Yeah, we've already, like we said, we talked a lot about the Titans, and again, you know what? You would probably start DJ Chark, but you know what? I do like Chenault. You know what? Mike Glennon has targeted Chenault a lot in this offense, which is kind of surprising when he has a guy like Chark. And obviously, you're going to start James Robinson because he's been elite at the running back position. But if you're looking for anybody else that you might be thinking about starting on offense, I think like Chenault is a guy you should definitely look at. All right, Broncos, Panthers.
I mean, I think you fire up your Panthers, especially if Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore are out. Start Robbie Anderson.
Yes.
Like, that's going to be a really good start. I'm not sure exactly who else is on that wide receiver depth chart because it's basically been those three guys all season. And I think last I saw, Robbie Anderson's like top 5, top 10 in the league in targets. So if that target share goes up, if they start using him down the field more because they don't have the other guys, watch out. He could have a big week.
Yeah. And, for the Broncos side of the ball, I think you probably got to start guys like Noah Fant. I think Noah Fant has a pretty good week. I don't know if he's healthy. I'm just going to assume he's healthy.
I'm fairly sure he is.
Yeah, so if he's healthy, start up Noah Fant. He's a very talented tight end against the Panthers. I could feel like this game could be very surprisingly close. I feel like this could be a pretty competitive game. So I think they're going to throw the ball a lot, and Fant's their best tight end, best player pretty much on the opposite end of the ball. So let's go for it. Let's see what happens. Cowboys, Bengals.
I think this is a very, very deep league kind of play, but Drew Sample at tight end.
Oh, wow.
He's been more heavily used since the change at quarterback. I believe it's
not a big sample size.
Let me look up the targets exactly here, but he's been, especially in a PPR league, I think he's a guy that you can desperation start, and he's got a decent floor.
Did you not hear what I said?
Yes, I did.
I
chose not to acknowledge it.
I respect that. It was a terrible, corny joke, and I'm sorry for the listeners who heard that. But
yeah, the first week with, I believe it's Brandon Allen's the quarterback's name, was 5 targets. Last week, 7. So the yardage isn't great, but if you're in a PPR league, if you can get 7 targets, 7 catches like he did last week, that's a pretty good week out of your tight end.
Yeah, and for me, I like Michael Gallup for the Dallas Cowboys. Andy Dalton looked like he would target him a little bit more than Cooper. Cooper still gets his points. So I like Cooper and Gallup actually for the Dallas side of the ball. I think they're going to have a good game. And for the Bengals, I like T. Higgins. T. Higgins is kind of like their guy that they've been using even though without Joe Burrow not being there. I do like T. Higgins. I think if you're in a desperation situation, I think T. Higgins, especially against Dallas, has been very bad defensively. It's definitely a guy you could start and feel pretty good against it. All right, Chiefs, Dolphins.
Start your Chiefs. I mean,
would you not start your Chiefs?
Yeah,
is the
exactly.
question.
That's every time you're looking at a Chiefs game, I almost think you just start everyone in those games. The Chiefs defense has been pretty good this year, but teams are going to be throwing against us because, I mean, the Chiefs are generally winning their games, or at least in high-scoring games, and they struggle against running backs a bit. So you want to start your running backs in what should be a decent matchup, and then you start your wide receivers in a game that they're probably going to be heavily used. So
yeah, and this game is scary for me because I'm going against Pat Mahomes, I'm going against Tyreek Hill, I'm going against that stack this week, and they've shown dropped 80 points, 90 points combined. So I am very nervous about this game. So like we said, start your Chiefs, but if you're going for the Dolphins side of the ball, start Myles Gaskin.
Yep.
Because Myles Gaskin has pretty much got that job back since he came back last week. And like you said, the Chiefs have a little bit of struggles against the running back position, so I really like the running back for Gaskin. All right, Arizona and New York Giants.
I mean, I'm interested to see what the Giants do this week. I'm a little bit worried about Kenyon Drake's upside with how well that Giants defensive front especially has been playing. They're kind of built to stuff the run more than rush the passer, so I think it's a week that it could be a little bit tougher sledding with him. I think you're going to start him anyways because he's been good since he's got back to being healthy. So
yeah,
he's a guy you start, but maybe just a little bit less upside than usual.
You know what? It's weird how this Giants team has been surprisingly competitive, and they beat the Seahawks last week, which I think no one expected that, especially without Daniel Jones. So I think for me, I think you start Wayne Gallman. I like Wayne Gallman. He's been very good recently, and the Cardinals haven't really proven to be a really good defense. And you know what? The Cardinals have been that team. I know someone is going to probably message me about this, a certain somebody, when I don't talk great about the Cardinals. But the Cardinals have been that team where they've lost the games they should have won. And I feel like this is another game where they should win this game. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants pull out another upset. And Wayne Gallman is pretty much that guy. He could run down their throat, really. So I like him in that matchup.
Yep.
Vikings and Buccaneers.
I mean, I already discussed Ronald Jones, and I think if it's going to be a Ronald Jones game, you sit Leonard Fournette. He's the passing back. Again, I don't think they're going to need to throw the ball a lot to the running back. I think it's going to be a kind of more run-heavy game, so I'd be avoiding Leonard Fournette this week.
Yep. And you know what? I feel like this goes without saying, but you know what? You ride the hot hand in Minnesota, and you start Adam Thielen, and you start Justin Jefferson.
Yep.
Because right now they are on fire. I think Thielen has 12 touchdowns this season, and Jefferson I don't think is too far behind. So, you know what? You start them both. They're throwing it a lot more than I thought they would, and I think it's going to continue against the Bucs because I think they're going to be down a lot, so they're going to have to throw a lot. So, you know what? Start them both in confidence. You love it. Colts and Raiders.
Start Jonathan Taylor. He's looked good
Amen,
the last
brother.
few weeks.
Amen.
He had a stretch this season where he looked like he was just not a good running back, and then all of a sudden something clicked. He looks good again, and they're using him. So in a good matchup against Vegas, that's what you want.
For me, it's Henry Ruggs. He had a big play against the Jets, which was a terrible defensive play. We'll just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
But you know what? Henry Ruggs is that speed guy off the side. And you know what? They're going to be down, I think, in this game. But this Colts defense has been very beatable in these last few weeks. So I think Derek Carr is probably going to throw a little bit more. So Waller's going to be heavily involved. And I think Ruggs is probably going to be able to catch maybe another big touchdown.
Yeah, there's always the high ceiling with Henry Ruggs, for sure.
Jets and Seahawks.
I mean, I would say almost avoid all the Jets. Like, honestly, like the couple of the wide receivers have looked good, but that Seattle defense, it's not a pushover anymore.
No.
Like, they've actually been playing pretty well. So I think in a week that if you need your fantasy season to continue, I would be very hesitant to be trusting any Jets this week.
Yeah, I think the only Jet you could probably maybe think of is Sam Darnold. But even again, that is a very desperation, maybe 2-quarterback league kind of play. Other than that, start your Seahawks. I like the wide receivers, but I really especially like the running backs this week. It's going to be Carson most likely, and if Carson can't go, by miracle, hopefully not, it would be Carlos Hyde. And you know what? They're probably going to be up big on the Jets after losing to the Giants. They're going to be very motivated to win, especially if they're still competing for division. So they're going to be, if they're up big, they're going to be running down their throats all game. They're going to be great for the running back position. All right, Packers-Lions.
I mean, can I just say to start Devontae Adams this week?
No, you can't. But yes, you can.
He's going to be good. I think Alan Lazard is another guy who should have a good week. Detroit's not great against the pass, and Lazard is actually a pretty good wide receiver as the number 2 there.
I feel like Devontae Adams, it's not whether you start Devontae Adams, it's how many touchdowns is Adams going to get.
Exactly.
I feel like that's what you're going with. It's like, does he score 1 or 2? Because
Yep.
you don't even know at this point. And I love that I've had Adams because he scored a touchdown, I think, every game he's played except for 1 or 2. So it's it is good sledding. We've already talked about Tanyan, that we like him this week too. But you know what? Let's just start Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Let's just go there. Let's just end it with that. I like the Packers offense in general. I think they're going to have another huge game. So I think you can start almost every Packer on the offensive side of the ball, like Valdez, Scantling, Adams, Jones, Tanyan. Feel pretty good about it.
I think even Jamal Williams this week is a guy you could start if you're looking for a deeper kind of running back start. They've been using them, and again, it's a great matchup. So
they could be up big, and you can get some really garbage time work for all we know, right?
Yeah.
All right, Saints and Eagles.
I'd be looking to start Michael Thomas this week. We've discussed already with the rushing quarterback, it's not as good for his weapons, but
Taysom Hill threw touchdowns.
yeah,
He has emerged. He can throw touchdown passes, folks. Breaking news.
Yeah. And on top of that Eagles defensive front is the one part of their defense that's pretty good. They've been pretty good against the run. It could be tough for Taysom Hill to just put his head down and run the ball all day.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if he's going to have to throw, it'll be Michael Thomas, and he could very easily have a big week.
Yeah. All right. Washington football team, 49ers. See, for me, I really like Logan Thomas, and that might be a little biased because I picked him up this week. But you know what? He's been good the last 2 weeks, and it looks like Antonio Gibson will probably not go due to turf toe, it looks like. So another good guy to start is probably J.D. McKissick and Peyton Barber if you're really looking for a desperate running back start. But give me more Logan Thomas and Terry McLaurin because that throwing offense has been looking really good under Alex Smith these last few weeks, and those two guys are pretty much their main dudes at the moment. So give me more of them.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for a running back start there, it'd be J.D. McKissick. Peyton Barber he's bad. He's not a good running back.
He's not good.
So I think you shoot for the receiving upside with McKissick, and yeah, I think he could be a good start this week.
Yeah. Steelers, Bills.
I mean, we just say this every week, but start your Steelers wide receivers.
Yep.
I've never seen this before. 3 wide receivers on one team that you feel pretty confident week to week starting all of them.
Yeah.
It
feels like they all get 10 targets a game, even Ebron. So there's 4 guys that you can legitimately start in that offense and be like, you know what? I like all of these guys. And I don't think I've ever really seen, other than when Dak was playing earlier this year, where the quarterback is throwing almost 50 times a game, almost every single time. So like we've said all the time, we preach it. Start all your Pittsburgh wide receivers, no problem.
Yeah, they really don't have any sort of running attack, so they kind of run it through the air with those short passes, and especially if you're in a PPR league, that's great.
All right, now we're going to go to the last game of the week, Ravens and Browns.
I mean, we've talked about this a little bit over the week. Start Jarvis Landry. He's been good, and he's the go-to guy now with Baker. So I think he's a guy. Baker looked surprisingly good last week. I don't know if that carries over into this game or not, but I would be pretty happy to fire up Jarvis Landry.
Yeah, and you know what? This hurts to say because I'm going against him in my fantasy playoff, but start Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown the last couple weeks has been looking okay. And he had Robert Griffin throw to a touchdown to him, I believe. He had Lamar throw a touchdown to him last game. And you know what? He's been very disappointing all season, but he has finally come back and finally not really giving you that elite production that people might have thought he was going to get in this offense, but he's been giving you enough to where he's startable. I don't think he blows up, especially against Cleveland. That defense is really, really good right now. I would definitely feel confident that he's probably going to get you another score and probably some yardage.
Yeah, the back-to-back weeks of 8 targets is very encouraging for him because he's got that big playability. Like, that guy's ridiculously fast, so if he's getting the volume, he should be a pretty decent start.
I don't know if that goes down with Mark Andrews coming back, but it very well could. It very well might stay the same. Who knows? We got to wait and see. So hopefully your matchup does not come down to Hollywood Brown because that would not be very reliable, but I do feel pretty good about him this week.
Yeah.
All right. So that's going to wrap it up for episode 12 of the Ryan Log Fantasy Show. As always, we'd like to thank you for listening and watching. We'd appreciate if you like and subscribe in our video because we want to build a little bit bigger community here in fantasy football because we just like enjoying talking to people about it. So you know what? Like, subscribe, and also hit the notification bell that way you don't miss any of our new videos. And good luck in the fantasy playoffs. It's a very stressful time. Hopefully your team advances to round 2. And also enjoy all the games this weekend because guys like me have to work. So if you're out there, enjoy it for guys like me who can't watch all the games. Anything you want to say, Luke, before we go?
No, I think you covered all of it.
All right. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. And as always, stay classy.